Thank you for joining us. The reason for arranging this conversation is that we've been speaking to a lot of HR leaders over the past few years, and we always see the same theme coming up. Many challenges that teams have around workforce health, things like energy, productivity, sick leave, seem to really be building gradually in day to day, rather than in clinical moments when someone goes to a hospital and sees their doctor. And so today is really about exploring this idea together in a very candid and open way and trying to look for some solutions. Across many organizations in Kenya that we speak to, we see three signals that come up almost in every conversation. First of all, a really big share of healthcare spend ends up being linked to preventable sick leave. A lot of managers struggle with team productivity and energy levels and don't really know how to approach that. And in some sectors, companies have to manage very high levels of weekly sick leave, up to 20% of staff going on sick leave every week. And these issues are often treated separately as separate problems, but they come from the same underlying driver, which is daily health behavior by the employees. Imagine someone in your team. They're not really sick. They come to work. But then every afternoon around 3 p.m., their energy crashes. What do? They grab a sugary snack or a sugary drink. Then their dinner is late because they commute and they come home late. Sleep isn't great. And so nothing here really triggers a necessity to go to a clinic and see a doctor. But then over months, these small patterns really accumulate and they turn into consistent chronic fatigue, weight gain, increased glucose, and potentially hypertension. And then at the end, sick leave. Most wellness programs that we've seen don't really see this stage at all, this daily behavior stage at all. And then employee health really changes daily. Workplace wellness can happen occasionally, let's say once a year or once a quarter. And so what we have between those moments is 360 days of everyday decisions when people are left on their own. So then the real question is, what if that health support really lived in the daily space? We are joined by Nelly Mutula, Head of People Operations at Fuso, and I would be particularly interested in hearing Nelly's perspective on what employee wellness looks like day to day, what gaps she sees, and how HR leaders like her think about new tools in the space. Nelly, welcome. It's really great to have you. From your experience working with HR teams, leading teams, what does the wellness actually look like day to day inside the daily work life and outside this annual wellness days and checkups?
We are primarily a remote first organization. The first thing that we usually do is a day-to-day of wellness is we work on digital tools, just ensuring that they have a space that they can be able to carve out where they're able to work from on a day-to-day. And this looks like just having a simple desk, having a simple chair that just allows you to work comfortably. What we have promoted is to ensure that they're able to have day rituals. And this can look simple. If your routine is to go to the office and take a cup of coffee, try and do that. Move around in your house, go take a cup of coffee. If at the end of the day, then you commute, you need to mimic commuting. Leave your laptop, go out, take a walk, or just go up the stairs, or even walk around your place. And that then just gives your mind the ability to know that the work day has started. What we usually promote is something that we call micro recovery. So what we have promoted is to ensure that meetings are not 60 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. For example, you're having a meeting that is 25 minutes and it's very clear agenda. Everyone is aware of what it is that is supposed to be done. So just ensuring that every meeting has a set time and a set agenda reduces the stress level that employees have. The other thing, we try to move away from always on kind of culture. Because you're working from home, you're expected to be available from 8 to 5 and even to 7 and even to 10 p.m. So people have been empowered to create time blocks. For example, for me, I tell my team members my lunch hour is sacred. Then being able to create the time blocks which allow for deep work. The last thing I would talk about is Slack. What we usually promote is for people to use more huddles. Huddles are a bit low stress environment compared to minutes. And I'm saying this because one of the things I do know is that meetings give people anxiety. If you're just having a random conversation with someone, the fact that it's a meeting, your nervous system is just too anxious to relax, but the huddles do allow us to be able to have at least a relaxed team. For me, wellness should not just be initiatives that we are doing once a quarter or once a month because we are guilty of doing that, but it needs to be things that we do on a day-to-day that allows employees to reduce on stress, to have clarity on what it is that they are doing, to plan their day. As long as they have that, you are not only offloading the responsibility of it having to be a HR thing, but also being an individual thing. So as a team member, I know I'm responsible for ensuring that I'm moving around. I know that I'm responsible for putting time blocks. I know that I'm responsible for ensuring that if a meeting is set, there's a clear agenda for it. And for us, what then we just need to be doing as HR is empowering the teams and the managers to just create an environment where the employees feel very valued.
We've been in this new way of working for over 5 years now. With increased stress, with so many digital tools, we have to be present on without face-to-face time. But then the wellness programs haven't really changed. What other gaps do you see between wellness programs that companies offer and the real employee needs for their health day to day?
Should I start off and say just the fact that we call it a wellness program is a gap? Because ideally it should be a way of life. We need to be able to embed it. So the gap here is that we see it as a program versus it actually being a system. That specific day, people will feel happy, their stress levels will reduce because they've gotten time to just plug out and go do something fun. But then they'll come back to the same environment tomorrow. And the other thing I would say is access versus psychological safety. So we see most organizations promote you can be able to take a mental health day. And then the next day, the person will come back and they're being reprimanded because, hey, why did you not show up yesterday? So it's that, yes, we need to be able to give employees access to the resources, but then we need to also be able to create the environment where people know that if I'm taking advantage of the resources, they're not coming at a risk to my career, neither then to my relationship with people that I'm working with. The other gap I do see here is that wellness is owned by HR, but HR only interacts with employees once in a while. The people who are constantly interacting with employees are their direct team leads or managers or their directors. So we need to then ensure that wellness is something that is not only a HR agenda, but managers own it and they're setting boundaries such that someone knows even if my manager sends me an email at 10 p.m., because I tend to work better at night, but I do not expect my team members to be on at 10 p.m. just because then you have seen some wellness programs which are really good and I advocate for this, where someone will be able to give you a gym membership because, of course, you need to be able to work out and keep fit. But then if that's the only wellness program that you have, it means that you're missing out on the rest of the well-being of the individual.
The point that really resonates with me personally is what you said about the manager role and responsibility. We see that a lot, where managers are the ones who know their teams best and who have to deal with a lot of those issues, but then often don't have the right tools and are not empowered to be responsible for that. We've seen a lot of challenges that Nelly described across organizations in Kenya, and we have really been experimenting with one idea, which is very simple. What would happen if that support lived in the day-to-day space rather than in events once a year? We want to show you what it could look like inside WhatsApp. And instead of showing different features, we want to show you a very simple employee journey.
Let's make this concrete. Imagine one of your employees. Let's call him James. James works in operations. He's not sick. He shows up to work, does his job, and his annual checkups looks mostly fine. But every afternoon, around 3 p.m., his energy crashes. He grabs a sugary snack. Dinner is late. Sleep isn't great. Nothing here triggers a medical visit. But over months, the small patterns slowly turn into fatigue, weight gain, unstable glucose, and eventually sick leave. Most corporate wellness programs don't see this stage at all because they're built around events, checkups, wellness days, benefits. But behavior rarely fails inside clinics. It fails at 9:30 p.m. when someone is tired, when they're hungry, when no clinician is present. And that's where deterioration begins. James received an invitation to join the program via WhatsApp. There's no new app, no password, no extra system to learn. And that matters a lot because friction kills engagement before behavior change even begins. During onboarding, we ask a few simple questions, behavioral ones. For example, when during your day does your energy usually drop? When are healthy habits hardest to maintain? What tends to derail you most often? James tells us afternoons after work when he's tired. And that context matters more than a lab value because lab values describe risk and context predicts behavior. So this becomes his behavioral baseline, not just what his health numbers are, but when behavior drift is most likely to happen. The system doesn't say improve your lifestyle. Instead, it offers two small options. For example, a 10-minute walk after dinner or reducing evening portion size slightly. One goal, 7 days, not transformation, not perfection, just small, repeatable movement. And this constraint is intentional because scope reduction increases follow through. And long term health stability is built through repetition, not intensity. Now, let me ask the room a quick question. If you had to guess, when do most employees report their energy dropping during the day? Usually, people say afternoon, after lunch, late evening. And that's exactly what we see. So the assistant checks in at the right time with a simple question. For example, how was your energy today? Or did you manage to achieve your goal? One thing that matters here is how small the interaction is. Most of these responses take about 10 seconds because this isn't meant to become another task. It's a light feedback loop that helps people stay aware of patterns. Because this is exactly where many wellness systems go silent and where behavioral drift begins. The assistant asks a simple follow-up. Would you like to record a short commitment for yourself this week? This serves an important behavioral purpose. And when people state an intention in their own words, follow through increases. So James records a short voice note to himself. He says, I really want to improve my energy this week. I'll take a short walk after dinner. This message stays in his chat history. It becomes a personal reminder of intent, not a rule imposed from outside. Later that week, James wonders something very simple. Can I eat rice tonight? It's a very small question, but chronic deterioration rarely comes from dramatic events. It comes from thousands of small decisions. And instead of guessing, he just asks, using a voice note. The assistant responds immediately, not with medical jargon, just practical guidance. For example, portion size, timing, and food pairing. Reducing friction in these moments reduces cumulative behavioral error. The goal is not perfect decisions. It's reducing drift in high-frequency moments. One evening, James uploads a photo of his dinner, rice and chicken. The assistant doesn't shame him. It doesn't give a lecture. It makes one small suggestion. Reduce the rice slightly tomorrow. Add vegetables. One correction, not 10. Because too many corrections reduce follow-through. In behavior change, precision matters less than repeatability. And over time, small corrections compound. A slightly smaller portion today, a slightly better plate next week. And these micro adjustments gradually stabilize health patterns. Even imperfect self-reports, not because of one answer, but because of patterns over time. We are not chasing perfect data here. We are identifying directional movement that creates a behavioral trajectory, not just a snapshot of one doctor visit. Sometimes signals appear, for example, persistent fatigue or worsening readings. The system does not diagnose, it flags risks and prompts escalation. A clinician will follow up. This prevents silent deterioration because most health problems don't appear suddenly. They develop quietly over time.
How this works from an employee perspective. The person can join via WhatsApp. Then there are daily checks in on things like energy, nutrition habits, and small behavioral adjustments. If needed, it can be escalated to a clinician. So if there are some danger signs or risks, it would be connected to a human clinician. But this does not replace care. And then it really strengthens this connection between the employees and the care they receive. In terms of the metrics, we focus on leading indicators that arise before medical things happen. Examples are engagement, so how consistently someone interacts with it, behavior stability, things like energy, nutrition patterns, and then early risk signals. Medical outcomes are really the indicators that come next. And then what happens at your level, the HR leaders get aggregated metrics without any individual data. If you're interested in exploring this solution for your team, we can definitely do that and arrange a one-on-one discussion to go in more detail. Or if you want to join future in-person and online discussions like this, you can also indicate there.
What are the most common invisible risks, for example, energy crashes that HR should be aware of when it comes to employee wellness?
By the time you're noticing someone is not performing, there are already micro behaviors that you should have noticed or you should be aware of, or at least you should be taking note of by the time someone gets to that point. The other risk that we end up seeing is when someone is burned out, and the person might not even see it. The person who is burned out might not see it as a problem because they just decide it's not my problem. I'm not going to solve it. So we just postpone the problem from person X to person Y. Then all of a sudden, the whole organization is full of grumpy, non-happy individuals throughout. The other thing that we end up seeing is it gets to a point where it affects your culture as an organization as well. That was my take on.
To also add a perspective of having engaged with a lot of HR leaders in the space, what we see is that risks that we are able to observe as a manager or as an HR are usually medical diagnosis, sick leave. However, the real risk signals are micro behaviors. So, for example, someone who has consistently low energy over several days and weeks, someone who doesn't sleep repeatedly on many nights, someone who is slightly gaining weight or is not able to maintain proper nutrition, or someone who used to go to the gym every day and now is missing those habits. For groups of people who might already have a chronic disease, it could also be things like everyday readings of their glucose levels. And all of these things are not observable by us as managers and as HR leaders, but often they're not observable by the doctors, and they're really critical. And something that then results in outcomes and spend and lower productivity. How do we actually not miss weeks and months of small signals that are usually invisible?
How many clients do you currently or have you currently enrolled, and what is some of the impact that you've been able to demonstrate for those who've taken up the WhatsApp Health Assistant as part of wellness?
We in total have reached over 50,000 individual lives in Kenya. On this solution, the WhatsApp Coach, we currently have over 500 monthly active users. We are seeing very strong engagement. A third of people engage weekly, meaning they're really following on the goals that they have set. They're using it to support their everyday behavior. We see over half of current users being able to not lose motivation, restart with a simpler goal.
How can HR teams measure the return on investment? How can HR teams measure the ROI of daily wellness initiatives versus a one-off wellness day?
You need to be able to know whether it's working or not, how the new people are showing up at work. Are they looking happier? And not just outward happiness, but actually you can see positive interaction among each other. You can see them collaborating. You can see performance improving, not just within teams, but also across the organization. You can be able to see people taking less sick leaves because they're prioritizing their health. Depending on your organization age demographic, you're able to then track the ages where chronic diseases are more able to happen than for others. Did you start off with more team members that had potential of high blood pressure issues? Now it has reduced because they've gone for a checkup and they've gotten a report that you had 20 people. Now you only have 2 people. You should also be able to get feedback from your managers, how the team members doing, how do they see them working and interacting with each other? Are they performing the micro habits that you're trying to promote on a day-to-day? The other thing, all of a sudden you're having in a week 10 people going on leave for whatever leave, maybe the sick leave and just casual leave here and there, and then you're seeing less and less of that happening. It means that then you've built an environment where workload is sustainable, people are able to manage themselves, and if people are willing to speak up, because one of the elements of wellness is that you're promoting psychological safety, which allows people to learn from each other because they're not afraid of, if I share my skill with someone else, all of a sudden they'll take my job.
We also think about ROI differently from how the rest of the space thinks about it, and more in line with what Nelly described here. Because most outcomes that really matter, productivity, absenteeism, long-term health, are driven by daily behavior. And instead of tracking long-term outcomes, we really focus on stability, people having more consistent energy, people getting earlier support when something is wrong, and then better visibility. And this is what drives ROI over time. I think another way to think about it is, what is the cost of not providing that support between annual checkups? And that cost, if you really think about it and quantify it, is very high. It's time to close. Nelly, thank you very much again for your perspective and wisdom. One main takeaway from today is probably very simple, that health does not happen in hospitals, in annual checkups, but it really happens every day in the small moments. Thanks a lot for everyone's time and attention, and look forward to taking the discussion further.